Hi, so this week I'm going to show you how to build a DIY PS1 memory card. So you can use any memory card for this. I bought a cheap one off AliExpress. It was £1.90 when I bought it. And I'm going to use an RP2040 to go inside, which are around about £1.80. You can, if you wish, add an SD card to it as well, which I'm going to do. You can also use a Pi Pico if you want. The only problem with this is it's a little bit large and I want to use the original case, so I'm going to give this one a miss. So this is the GitHub page. I'll leave all the links in the description. It's got all the details on here. You can also purchase proper boards to solder it to, which is amazing. And then these are your solder points for this, your Pi Pico and your Pi Zero. So obviously we're going to do the Pi Zero this time, may do a Pico further in the future. And then this tells you the differences between the one with the card or without the card, but we're going to do the SD card version. So first off, we've got two screws in the bottom, so we just take them two out. And they just need to lift and slide, and then the front comes from the back, and as you can see, it's a very, very small circuit board inside, which we'll just pop out. So I want to cut the board, but to make sure it still has the holes in so we can remount it to keep it nice and secure. So this is the pin layout for the Pi Pico, and this is the pin layout for the Zero, and this is the one we're going to do. So I'm going to come with a sharp knife. This would be better if you had a cutting device, but at the moment I'm waiting for mine to be delivered. So I'm getting a sharp knife and I'm just going along as much as I can, a couple of sides on one side. Carefully snip one end, carefully snip the other with some wire snips. And then I'm going to flip it over and then cut along the back as well. Really careful, you don't want to cut your fingers off here. And then once you cut through enough layers, you'll be able to grasp it between your two fingers and very carefully wiggle it back and forward, and then it will come apart. If you're too rough, you're going to snap the board completely, which is going to make it quite useless, so just take your time doing this. As I said, a rotary tool would be much better. And then I'll pop it back into place and you can see how much room we've got here. So we've got plenty of room to put the RP0 in and also space for the SD card. So we'll go back to the motherboard, and now we need to scratch off along these traces because this is where we're going to be soldering the wires to. So make sure you don't scratch too deeply because you don't want to scratch past the copper. You just want to be taking the top layer off. There's 7 wires that we need to solder to, and then just do as I'm doing, making sure that each trace lines up to one of the pads. And now while it's in place, it makes it a little bit easier for me. I'm applying a little bit of flux. And then we'll come with a big tip, soldering iron, plenty of solder, and then tin all these pads that we're going to be applying some wires to. Then I've got 30 AWG wire that I'm going to solder the ends to. They only need to be 1.5 inches in length due to the sizing that we've got within the case. So very carefully come in with your soldering iron, make sure that you solder it nice and securely, you don't want them coming off. As long as you've scraped off enough of the trace, then there'll be enough of the wire to solder to, and then that will make it nice and secure. Then a quick clear of isopropyl, get rid of all the sticky flux, and then we can move on to the next stage. So this is where we want to get the RP2040 set up. So follow the links again, and you go to this, and then there's 2 versions. So there's the Pi Pico version and the Zero version. Make sure you download for the right Pi that you're using. I'm going for the Zero. So I'll download the UF2 file, which takes a couple of seconds. Now we need to plug it into our PC. So if you just plug it in directly, it's not going to be recognized. So what you need to do is you need to hold down the boot button and then plug the USB cable in, and then it will open up on the screen. Then you simply drag across the UF2 file. It takes a couple of seconds to upload, and then it should eject itself and then doesn't appear anymore. And now we can disconnect. Next up is setting up the SD card. So I found formatting to exFAT was the easiest way to do it, and then just download the main file and then just follow through as I'm doing, and then we need to get to the memory card image. So just click through, follow what I've done on screen, and then there's two versions. I don't think it really matters, I always use the top one, and then just drag this file across to the root of the SD card. And now these are your save files, but they need to be renamed, so I'm going to put a couple of save files on there. So I'm just recopying it, and then you just need to rename it, and you start with 0, and then you go up in numbers, so you can add as many as you want. Obviously using a 32GB SD card like myself is overkill, but that's all I had. And now we can go back to the soldering and then get this part set up. So back to the layout. So I'll highlight on the screen what wires go to where to make it easier to follow. So we've just got these 5 wires that all go along the bottom. And then we've also got the ground that goes along the side. And then the 3.3 volt I do to the 5 volt, as I need the 3.3 volt for the SD card. If you're not putting the SD card in, then use the 3.3 volts instead. And then back to these wires on the bottom, get the final 2 in, and then make sure they're all nicely soldered securely. And as you can see, we're going to be tight, but there should be enough room for our SD card to go in there as well. So we'll just tin the pads on the SD card reader, give it a little clean, get rid of the flux. So these are the connections that we're going to go to. So they're labelled slightly different to what's on the GitHub, but as we go along, I will highlight the differences. So there's 4 connections that we need to solder to, plus the power and the ground. So first off, we'll just attach the 6 wires to the SD card reader itself. Make sure they're all nice and secure. And now I'm following from the top, so they don't quite line up with the board itself. So make sure you follow what's on the screen, or you follow the diagram precisely to make sure that you wire up correctly. So we do these 4 along the side, and then we need to go across, and we go straight to the 3.3 volts, and then we'll also solder to the shared ground point as well. So that's all the 6 wires soldered nice and securely, and as you can see, it's going to be a tight fit, but we'll make it fit. So a quick PC test. So as you can see, we're all connected, SD card in, plug it into the PC, and then it pops up and the SD card reader shows with my saved memory slots. If you don't have the SD card in, then nothing will boot up. Now we're going to try it in the console. So very carefully plug it in, make sure it's all lined up, don't force it or you might break it. And then we'll turn it on and we get a red light straight away, which is a good sign. So I'll start the game up, letting that boot up. A little bit of Gran Turismo. And now I've gone to the saving options. So click on save. It's recognised that there's a memory card there. I'll click OK and then it starts flashing orange and green. A little bit more orange flashing, which means it's actually saving and it's doing the job. Goes back to red, that means it's now saved. So the mod has now worked, we just now need to modify the case itself and get everything fitted in and get it going. So we put all the bits into the bottom piece of the memory card and then we'll get a marker to mark out where we want the internals to line up. And then I'm going to come in with this Dremel that I've just purchased. And then we're just going to very carefully grind away and then snip away. It's always best to take out as little as possible and just go from there. If you go straight in and take out too much, you can't put it back. So just take your time, just keep taking cuts, just keep coming back with the boards, lining them up, seeing where they fit in best, seeing if you need to snip a little bit more or angle it a little bit more. It's going to be a tight squeeze, but it's going to fit in. The SD card's going to stick out a bit more than I like, but unfortunately that's what's going to happen. So I'm happy with them placements. I'm going to come with some hot glue and then line this one up so that the USB-C will be sticking out the sides, and then just pop it into place and then hold it down for a couple of seconds. And then same with the micro SD card. Pop the hot glue on the bottom of it, squeeze it in, Make sure it's all lined up correctly and make sure you haven't got any metal pieces touching because you don't want to get any shorts. So that's all nice and neat. I'm also going to pop a little bit of hot glue onto the board itself. It shouldn't move once the top cover's on, but there's no harm to put extra just to keep it nice and secure. Now we come with the other cover and now we have to start cutting away at this so we'll be able to have access to the USB-C and the SD card at the back. So again, we come with our grinder. You can use a sharp knife if you want to, or some snips. You don't need to use a grinder itself. I'll leave the link in the description for the grinder that I'm using though. It was pretty cheap. And like I said before, just keep cutting away nice and slow. You want to take less off than more, as you don't want a big massive hole around the USB and the SD card, otherwise it's going to look a bit rough. It just hooks on at the ends, and then if it closes at the front, it still needs a little bit more snipping, so I'll tidy this up a little bit more, but we are almost there. So there you can see it's now fitting better than it was. The SD card fits in. Make sure I put it in the right way. I just need to pop the 2 screws back into the bottom, put them in nice and tight, and then that's it, it's all done. So it says lifting it a little bit in the middle. This is because the chip is quite wide and it's a little bit too thick for it. The SD card sticks out to the back because the adapter's not one of them clicky in and out ones, which is a shame. But at the end of the day, it's going to do the job. Put the controller in. Put the memory card in. Press your power button. And then you should be getting a red light, which you can kind of see through. It helps that this is a cheap plastic. So there you can see a red light on it, which means it's got power. And then I'll go to the save menu. And then you can very lightly see it'll start flickering in a minute. And then once it starts flickering, that means that it's actually saving. So flickers green or yellow, and then goes orange, and then goes back to red. Once it goes to solid red, it means it stops saving, and if you need to, you can remove it. So that's it. Our DIY PS1 memory card, a £1.90 fake card, a £1.80 Raspberry Pi Zero, and an SD card adapter which costs a couple of pence. So I've revisited the card and I've decided to try and very carefully grind out a little bit of extra plastic on the inside where the Raspberry Pi Zero sits and the SD card sits. So as you can see, because I've ground it a little bit too much, you can kind of see through the plastic because it was very thin. It's very cheap, but you could always put a little sticker over there, so it's not the end of the world. It closes better, so it does look a little bit better overall. So this is definitely my version 1. I'm going to look at doing a version 2 later down the line, try and get a little bit smarter and neater. It was a nice, pretty simple mod to do. If you've got the part, I recommend it. Thanks very much for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe.